The vultures are circling, and my brother doesn't even realize he's the one about to be devoured. I'm Arthur, and until 6 months ago, I was the CEO of Stellar Tech Solutions, a company I'd bled for, nurtured from a flickering idea into a roaring inferno of innovation over 2 decades. 53 years old, divorced 10 years ago, a casualty of my obsessive dedication to Stellar Tech. I poured every ounce of my being into that company. It was my legacy, my identity. Now, it's a gaping, throbbing wound inflicted by someone who shares my blood. The shock still feels fresh, like a shard of ice lodged in my chest. People keep expecting me to explode, to unleash a torrent of rage, maybe even concoct some harebrained, violent scheme. But that's not how I operate. I'm a strategist, a builder, not a destroyer. I don't do tantrums, I orchestrate calculated retribution. It's a far more satisfying dish served cold. Desmond, my younger brother, always seemed to exist in my shadow. Not out of malice, I suspect, but more out of a fundamental lack of drive. He bounced from job to job, a leaf caught in the wind, never quite finding solid ground. 7 years ago, fueled by a misguided sense of familial obligation, I offered him a position at Stellar Tech, head of sales. I figured his natural charisma would be a boon. He had the gift of gab, could charm the socks off anyone. Hindsight, as they say, is 20/20ths. I saw his charm as an asset, I failed to recognize it as a meticulously crafted weapon aimed squarely at my back. It started subtly. Suggestive glances during board meetings when I presented ambitious, cutting-edge projects. Casual criticisms of my leadership style, whispered during hurried lunches. Initially, I brushed it off as sibling rivalry, a little brother's harmless envy. But the whispers amplified, became more poisonous. He'd subtly steer client conversations, conveniently forgetting to mention my role in initiating certain strategies. He'd schedule meetings without my knowledge, cultivating an atmosphere of clandestine activity. I recall a particularly galling incident with crystal clarity. We were heavily invested in securing a major deal with Omnicorp. Months of intense negotiations, painstakingly crafted presentations. We were on the precipice of sealing the deal. Then, Desmond deemed it necessary to have a final check-in meeting. A prior commitment with a supplier in Germany prevented me from attending. Foolishly, a word I've been forced to repeat frequently these past months, I trusted my brother to finalize the agreement. He texted me updates throughout the day, assuring me that they were tantalizingly close to an agreement. I took him at his word. Days later, I discovered the deal had imploded. Omnicorp had walked away. When I confronted him, he feigned ignorance and innocence. He insisted it was all a misunderstanding, that Omnicorp had simply decided to pursue a different path. Something inside me solidified. I didn't know if it was a sudden surge of intuition or a resurfacing of buried memories, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could no longer trust him. The financial discrepancies were the next glaring red flag. Minor at first, inconsistencies in expense reports, invoices that seemed inflated, suspiciously high. Our CFO, Beverly, a woman with a laser-like focus and zero tolerance for nonsense, brought them to my attention. I trusted Beverly implicitly. But before I had the opportunity to investigate further, Desmond masterfully manipulated the board, convincing them that Beverly was past her prime, that her skill set was no longer relevant in the rapidly evolving tech landscape. The board, swayed by Desmond's charisma and carefully planted seeds of doubt, dismissed the irregularities and pressured Beverly into accepting early retirement. Then came the email. Buried deep within Beverly's archived files, expertly concealed, but not concealed well enough. A meticulously crafted proposal to a venture capital firm, outlining his meticulously calculated plan to dethrone me and seize control of Stellar Tech. He'd spelled out everything, the names of the board members he'd strategically cultivated, the clients he'd successfully alienated, the financial leverage he'd subtly engineered. Reading it felt like a physical blow, a wrenching sensation that stole my breath and left me reeling. The subsequent board meeting was a charade, a theatrical performance with me as the unwitting star of a tragicomedy. They accused me of mismanagement, of being out of touch with the dynamic tech world. Desmond sat there, radiating an aura of faux concern, offering me a shoulder to cry on. The vote was unanimous. I was out. The severance package was an insult, a pittance compared to the substantial fortune I had generated for the company. I refused to sign. He responded with that infuriatingly charming smile, the one that used to melt hearts in close deals. "Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Arthur," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. That's when the coldness descended, a chilling wave that extinguished the burning embers of rage and replaced them with a glacial focus. He thought he'd won. He thought I was defeated, broken. The fool. He underestimated me. My first act was to meticulously document everything. Every clandestine deal, every whispered conversation, every act of sabotage. I spent weeks poring over financial records, unearthing incriminating evidence. I uncovered proof of embezzlement, breach of contract, and even a disturbing hint of industrial espionage. I needed allies. People I could trust implicitly, people who weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. I contacted Gareth, an old army buddy who now runs a discreet private investigation firm. Gareth owed me a significant favor, one that dated back to a particularly harrowing mission in Kandahar. He understood the value of discretion, the meaning of loyalty. "I need information, Gareth," I said, my voice tight with controlled fury. "Dirt. Anything you can find on Desmond and his dealings at Stellar Tech. Leave no stone unturned." Gareth didn't ask questions. Within a week, he delivered a file that was thicker than a Manhattan phone book. It was a goldmine of incriminating information, a treasure trove of deceit and betrayal. Next, I reached out to Simone, a lawyer I'd known for years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and fiercely loyal, a formidable force in the courtroom. I explained the situation, presented her with the evidence I had painstakingly collected. "This is actionable, Arthur," she declared, her eyes gleaming with predatory excitement. "We can sue him for breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, corporate espionage, the list goes on. We could bleed him dry." "I don't just want to sue him, Simone," I said, my voice low and steady. "I want to dismantle him. I want to watch his entire world crumble around him." Simone smiled, a chillingly beautiful expression that promised retribution. "Then let's get to work," she said. Then there was Jasper, a hacker I knew through a mutual acquaintance. Young, exceptionally gifted, and morally flexible. I needed unauthorized access to Desmond's personal and corporate email accounts, his bank records, everything. "This is highly illegal, Arthur," Jasper warned, his voice laced with a mixture of caution and excitement. "Penitentiary illegal." "I know," I replied, my voice unwavering. "Are you in or out?" "I'm in," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "But it's going to cost you. And I prefer to be paid in untraceable cryptocurrency." I didn't hesitate. "Name your price," I said. With my team assembled, the plan began to take shape. It was a complex chess game, several moves ahead of Desmond's simple-minded greed. He was far too consumed with basking in the spoils of his treachery to notice the gathering storm clouds. He leased a lavish penthouse overlooking Central Park, purchased a ridiculously expensive Italian sports car, and started throwing ostentatious parties, celebrations of his ill-gotten gains. The sheer arrogance of it was sickening. I deliberately fed him false information, carefully crafted rumors designed to lull him into a false sense of security, to reinforce his inflated ego. I wanted him to lower his guard, to become complacent, vulnerable. The first strike was to leak select details of the financial irregularities to the press. An anonymous tip, meticulously worded to raise suspicion without revealing the full extent of his crimes. The rumors spread like wildfire across the internet and traditional media. Stellar Tech's stock price plummeted, sending tremors of panic through the financial markets. Then, Simone filed a lawsuit on behalf of a coalition of disgruntled shareholders, accusing Desmond and the board of gross mismanagement and outright fraud. The lawsuit was a public relations catastrophe for Stellar Tech, a reputational black eye that threatened to permanently tarnish the company's image. Investors began to pull out, accelerating the company's downward spiral. Jasper delivered the emails. Thousands of them. Damning evidence of Desmond's elaborate schemes, his blatant lies, his treacherous betrayals. I selectively leaked particularly damaging emails to key clients, systematically undermining their trust in Stellar Tech and its leadership. Contracts began to vanish, eroding the company's foundation. The walls were closing in, and Desmond started to panic. He hired a phalanx of high-priced lawyers and public relations consultants to fend off the relentless attacks, but it was far too late. The damage was irreversible. The company's reputation was in tatters. I wanted him to experience the same profound sense of despair that I had felt, the same crushing humiliation. So, I orchestrated a chance encounter at one of his lavish parties, a gathering of the city's elite. I walked in, uninvited, radiating an aura of icy calm that belied the fury simmering beneath the surface. He saw me, his face draining of color. "What are you doing here, Arthur?" he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "Just wanted to congratulate you on your remarkable success, Desmond," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "You've really made a spectacular mess of things." I took a sip of my champagne, savoring the moment. "Get out of here," he hissed, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Not until I've had my say." I leaned closer, my gaze unwavering. "You thought you could steal my company and get away with it. You thought you were smarter than me. You were wrong, Desmond. Now, watch everything you've built crumble into dust." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, speechless, paralyzed by the realization that his carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The final, devastating blow came when Gareth unearthed some deeply personal and damaging information regarding Desmond's private life. Apparently, the charming facade he presented to the world concealed a dark secret, a hidden truth that would shatter his carefully cultivated image. I shared this information with Desmond's wife and his mother, women who had always held him in high regard. The expressions of profound betrayal and utter devastation on their faces provided a grim sense of satisfaction. He lost his family, his reputation, everything he held dear. Desmond was forced to resign from Stellar Tech in disgrace. The company was left in ruins, its reputation irreparably tarnished. The venture capital firm withdrew its funding, leaving Stellar Tech teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. He lost everything. His job, his wealth, his family. He reached out to me, his voice choked with tears, begging for forgiveness, pleading for reconciliation. I hung up the phone without a word. There would be no forgiveness, no reconciliation. He made his bed and now he has to lie in it. My revenge was complete. The vultures had feasted. And I was the one who'd set the table.